Welcome to Sounds of Resistance YouTube channel. The 8th month of the Ukraine-Russia war is witnessing very interesting and risky developments. The Ukrainian warriors fearlessly plunge into the lairs of the Russians, making them regret that they came. Considering the situation of Russian troops in Ukraine, they are losing casualties day by day and are rapidly withdrawing from the occupied Ukrainian territory. In both eastern and southern Ukraine, Russian soldiers and pro-Russian separatists and Russian citizens are leaving the regions completely. Putin's annexation claims are completely collapsed with the withdrawal of the Russian army and civilians. Now the Russian army, which is getting very tired, just started to watch the attacks of Ukraine. Thousands of Russian soldiers and senior officers in the Russian army who can no longer stand these suffocating attacks of Ukraine want the Ukrainian war to stop, and they think it's time to return home. We are now faced with an event that will vindicate the thoughts of the Russian soldiers and will change the whole course of the war. While it's surprising that Russian soldiers did not see how the war progressed, but Vladimir Putin did not see the progress of the war, the incident that took place on the Kerch Bridge connecting Russia and Crimea is astonishing. Part of the Kerch Bridge was destroyed by huge explosions at dawn on October 8th. After some investigations, the Kremlin accused Ukraine of organizing a terrorist attack on the Crimean bridge. However, the response from Kiev did not take long, and they reminded us that they are not like Russia and the heavy bombardment of civilian life in Zaporizhia. After the explosion, the people of Crimea were alarmed. Panicked Crimean residents were seen queuing at gas stations in some cities on the Ukrainian peninsula. Russian authorities on the occupied peninsula urged residents of Crimea not to panic, fearing that stocks would run out. Despite claims that there is no reason to panic, authorities in Crimea have already begun to limit local populations to up to 3 kilograms of basic foodstuffs. Reports from officials in Russia told the residents of Crimea not to panic, as there are at least 2 weeks of fuel reserves. Despite the fact that the Crimean authorities have warned their citizens, it's understood that they are giving signals of the danger that may occur in the future. Sergei Aksyonov, the head of the Crimea who served in Russia, stated that the Russian state should not raise fuel prices. However, it turned out the employees of the gas station in Crimea adjusted the price offered outside the station. Long queues formed at gas stations in Yalta, Sevastopol, Simferopol, and other cities of the peninsula. Long queues were also observed at the local port as citizens in Crimea rushed to board a ferry to Russia. According to Russian state media, all round-trip bus and train tickets to and from Crimea have been cancelled. Aksyonov said, "We have had food stocks for more than 2 months, in almost everything. There is no risk in this area. The repair work of the Crimean bridge will be carried out without bureaucracy. As soon as the investigative committee and the FSB are finished, we actually start the investigations today," he said. After the great symbolic victory for Ukraine, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry tweeted, "Ukraine too, famous symbols of Russian power in Crimea, the guided missile cruiser Moskva sank and the Kerch Bridge collapsed. What next, Russians?" The line of the temporary ferry organized by the invaders to escape from Crimea to Russia has already reached 3 kilometers, said Marina Bardina, MP of Ukraine, on her Twitter account. Kerch Bridge is an escape route from Crimea for its estimated 2 million residents. Also, Sevastopol, the population of Crimea, is over 2 million, together with the Crimea. Currently, according to the data received, the number of Russians trying to escape from Crimea has exceeded 100,000. It has been a few days since the explosion, but the escape from Crimea is still continuing rapidly. It's said that the record-breaking numbers of citizens fleeing from Turkey may reach 500,000 in the coming days. The Kerch Bridge, which is the logistical heart of the Russian army, was blown up by a bomb-laden vehicle in the early hours of the morning last day. The area where the bomb-laden truck passed, the side towards the middle of the bridge, collapsed. The Kerch Bridge has now lost its function. The Russians use this bridge to carry out the most important military shipments. The Kerch Bridge, which also is vital for citizens living in Crimea, is no longer in use. When the Kerch Bridge was put into service in 2018, its cost was approximately $15 billion. The length of the bridge is 19.5 kilometers, which means it's one of the longest bridges in the world. The Kerch Bridge, which is quite costly, is currently closed to all round-trip transportation. While the Russians were already dealing with serious problems in military shipping issues, a dagger has now been thrust into the heart of Russian logistics. In addition, the situation that worries the Russians the most is the situation of the Russian troops deployed in and around Crimea after the Kerch Bridge collapsed. The Russian troops currently in and around Crimea are almost stuck in this region, and it's not possible for the Russian armed forces to deliver military equipment to the troops stationed in this region. Over time, the Russian soldiers in and around the Crimea will consume their ammunition, and the Russian military units in this region will be in a completely defenseless position against the Ukrainian army. In short, the loss of function of the Kerch Bridge is dragging the Russian army towards collapse. It has not been determined at the moment to whom the bomb-laden vehicle that carried out the attack on the Kerch Bridge belonged. Crimea belongs to Ukraine. These developments are signs that Crimea should now be handed over to its real owners. Ukraine has long waited for Crimea, which was illegally annexed by Russians in 2014. Now another opportunity arose for the heroes of Ukraine. At present, the heroic Ukrainian army has established dominance on the southern fronts of the country, enclosing the Russian troops in a triangle. It looks like it will be much easier for the Ukrainian heroes as the Russian troops are stuck in the Crimea. For, beyond Crimea, it is inevitable that Russian troops in Ukraine will be in big trouble after the explosion. The Ukrainians not only targeted the territory or individuals, they attacked logistics, command, and ammunition depots. The Kerch Bridge itself is an example, so the Russians are having a resupply problem. Even if they do have an impressive group of well-armed and combat-ready soldiers still in Crimea, they will be in trouble if Russia is unable to provide these soldiers with additional military support. While Ukraine did not claim responsibility for the attack, Ukrainian officials were delighted at the news of the destruction. The Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine shared a slideshow of photos of the fire, accompanied by a video of Marilyn Monroe singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President." The tweet shared by the Secretary of the Defense Council of Ukraine was likely a stinging birthday present for President Putin, who turned 70 on Friday. President Zelensky's advisor, Mikhailo Podolyak, also made a cryptic statement after the explosion. The Crimean Bridge is just the beginning, said Podolyak, advisor to the head of Ukraine. Everything illegal should be destroyed. Everything stolen should be returned to Ukraine. Everything occupied by Russia should be deported, he said, adding that Crimea belongs to Ukraine. The president of Ukraine, Zelensky, had a saying about Crimea that he has expressed in every statement since the beginning of the Russian invasion, which I think is one of the statements that best illustrates the current situation. The president of Ukraine, Zelensky, explained very well that Ukraine will have a say in Crimea with the words, "The war started in Crimea and will end in Crimea." It seems that Crimea, which has gone through a difficult process since the annexation of Russia, will now regain its true owner in the following processes. Citizens in Crimea, on the other hand, are still in shock, making preparations to escape from Crimea at full speed. Russian leader Vladimir Putin, on the other hand, seems to have come to the end of the road in this regard. Because Putin managed to keep his calm after the defeats in all parts of the Ukrainian territory. But the Russian leader became very uneasy after the attack on the Kerch Bridge. Worried about the Ukrainian heroes retaking Crimea, Russian leader Vladimir Putin may even give up some of the occupied Ukrainian lands in order to prevent this. What will the advancing process show us? We will witness together. But for now, that's all for us. Until then, stay cool. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to be notified of new videos.